Museums are more than places we visit on a field trip. Across the country, museums protect our shared history, care for wildlife and collections, strengthen local economies, support job training, and spark curiosity in people of all ages. Right now, you can help make sure museums stay strong for future generations. Museum Advocacy Day is a national moment when people contact Congress to ask for continued support for museums and the federal agencies that fund them. Learn how to take action at aam-us.org and tell your representatives that museums matter to education, to communities, to the economy, and to our democracy.
Hello, welcome back to Geek Warning, the cycling tech-focused podcast from Escape Collective. I hope by now you know exactly who I am and also who this is.
That's me.
Hello, Ronan. Yes, it is Ronan and Dave. Ronan and Dave. Back again for more tech this week. Ronan and Dave. Yeah.
That was worse than the original take that we tried.
Yes. I actually quite like the original take. Unfortunately, I'd forgotten to turn my microphone on for it, so then the second take just felt completely forced. But anyway, no one will know that, and I'll never do it again. I apologize to everyone. Yeah, I guess for anyone tuning in, Geek Warning, as a reminder, we do have two feeds of it. There's a free feed, and there's a member-only feed. And so for those on our member-only feed, we do have Ask a Wrench at the end of this episode. And for those on the free feed, you get everything but Ask a Wrench. But you also get ads. So if you don't like ads and you want the whole episode, then I hope you know what to do. Head on over to escapecollective.com/geek warning. Sign up, become a member, get access to everything we do at Escape Collective. All right, Ron, it's a full episode this week. We've got a new bike coming out. We've got a cheeky little update, which I really like the sound of because it is free. Some sad news, some industry news, a new bike spotted, something on your mind, and of course a PSA, and that is all before we get into Ask a Wrench with Zach at the end of all this. So anyway, let's get started on some of the news.
Big show.
Yeah, you've spent a bunch of time. You had quite early access to seeing this bike, and then haven't seen it since. New Cannondale SuperSix Evo Gen 5. What's the story here?
Yeah, Cannondale have announced. Well, I mean, you say Gen 5. I'm calling it the Gen 4.5. Because this is
Gen 4S,
Gen 4B, whatever we're gonna go with. It's a subtle update, let's say, to the Cannondale SuperSix Evo platform. A bike that I reviewed when it was last updated about 2.5 years ago, maybe 3 years ago at this point. And yeah, it's very similar to what we've seen before. Actually, when you looking at the frame, you kind of have to remind yourself it's a new bike, because Cannondale have decided to iterate rather than revolutionize, as the catchphrase might go. And I think the headline claims are it's Cannondale's lightest disc frame and fork that they have made. And yeah, I mean, things like UDH compatibility, 32mm tire clearance, new handlebars, and that's really, in terms of Cannondale's own doings, that's sort of the heights of the upgrades. They are introducing a new SL spec version, which comes with a lighter system bar, which is, it sort of forgoes all aero gains by reverting back to round tops on the handlebars. They're then pairing those bars with their lightest frame, the Series 0 version of this new Gen 5. And they're fitting that with shallower wheels, DT Swiss's new carbon spoke offering for what they're calling the SL option for somebody who just wants the lightest version of this bike. And out of the box, that weighs 6.4 kilos with bottle cages, but without pedals. So that out of the box, that's pretty good. And then you've got the Lab 71 and the Evo 1 versions of this bike, which have their system bar aero version, which has the profiled tops and that, and comes with deeper reserve wheels, the 57-64 wheels, which I actually quite like.
No more hologram wheels, right?
No more hologram wheels. They've done away with those, and I mean, it's at least in terms of the reserve options on this, it kind of makes sense because Pawn, Umbrella, and all that, and the reserve, Cervelo, Cannondale, all under the one roof. not surprised to see those reserve wheels pop up on the new Evo. But it is also, I think, it's one of the upgrades that makes the bike. And actually, I was kind of in a weird situation where I actually attended the EF team training camp back in November and sat in on when the riders were getting the presentation for this new bike the first time they'd seen it. And Cannondale, the same people who then would 24 hours later do the press presentation, showed the aero testing results of this new SuperSix Evo Gen 5 to the team riders. And there was practically no difference in terms of aero. It's like, there is a weight saving with the new bike. That was apparently what EF were demanding, as well as a slight change to the geometry. But I thought, oh, that's interesting. There's no aero saving here at all with a new bike, and they're not even claiming one. And then 24 hours later, we had the press presentation, and there was an aero saving claim. So naturally, that was one of the first things I took up with the Cannondale engineers when I sat down to speak with them, and what ended up becoming like a 2-hour long interview. And they said, yeah, they were...
We're just going to play that interview now.
Full 2 hours.
No.
but they owned it. They didn't try to skirt around it. They just said, no, that we tested the EF team bikes in the configuration they'll be using, which is with the Vision wheels that they are sponsored to use. And with that setup, there was very, very marginal aero saving versus when you compare the new Gen 5 that you or I could buy, or listeners to this episode could buy. It comes with the new reserve deeper wheels. The Gen 4 came with the hologram 50s that we mentioned. And so when you compare that spec, there is an aero saving, they're saying. And that's, as I've written my review of this bike, I'm pretty sure a lot of people will hop on that and they'll start, oh, the only aero saving is in the wheels and all this, that, and the other. First of all, I kind of just like and respect that they were pretty clear with the team. Yeah. They didn't tell them, oh, if you had these other wheels, it could be faster. But they did just they give it to them straight. They could have cherry picked the data here and showed the team the results from comparing the stock bikes and told them, oh, you have a faster bike now, and nobody would have really known any different. But they were straight up and honest with them, which, when I asked them about that as well, the Cannondale engineers and Nathan Barry there, who runs all their aero development, just said, here, look, the only way to be credible is to act credibly. And so that was, again, I don't think anything I can say here will calm those who want to jump on that fact that, as Barry estimated, maybe 2/3 of the aero gain from the new bike do come from the wheels. But yeah, nevertheless, I kind of like their approach there and taking that more credible approach. That said, it does mean that anybody with the Gen 4 right now could just buy these new reserve wheels and get, in Barry's estimation, maybe 2/3 of the aero gain. The other third, he said, is coming from optimizations to the frame, tubing profiles, and the new handlebars. But yeah,
can you put that handlebar onto the previous version?
Not only can you, but it has been done, because very few people noticed that actually Ben Healy ran these new handlebars at the Road World Championships last year, where he finished on the podium. He was riding a Gen 4 with the Gen 5 handlebars. So yes, it has been done. Interesting.
All right. Yeah. So as you mentioned, it's got UDH as one of the more notable differences, and when you're looking at the two bikes, if you don't know what you're looking at, the UDH is kind of the giveaway for the new bike. There's also, subtle shaping differences, but there is some slight tweaks to geometry. And I think this is probably something that we should send people to your review to get an understanding of and sort of get a deeper understanding of, because you did go into depth on this. But what did they do to the geometry?
So first of all, there's an extra size. They used to have that size 51. I think it went 48, 51, 54, something like that. They now have split that 51 into a size 50 and a 52. So there's an extra size in there, which they say will give riders better optionality on the frame sizing. Across the rest of the sizes, then there's like an ever so small tweak to the reach, but the sort of headline adjustment is a 10mm drop in stack across all those sizes. And now, yeah, I did go into detail on this in the review. It's one that I'm not surprised the pros are demanding, but I don't think it's in line with what customers for this bike would maybe. not all customers, obviously, we can't speak, and we're speaking in generalities here, but for the vast majority of customers who end up with spacers onto their stems anyway, it's just going to mean more spacers are potentially running out of enough spacers.
Yeah. And am I right in thinking that the Gen 4 Super 6 was actually pretty tall in its stack height, like comparatively speaking amongst other World Tour bikes? If I'm not mistaken, last time I looked, it was like more like a Giant Defy or even like a Sevilla Caledonia in terms of height. Is that right?
I'm not sure it's quite as tall as those, but for the size that I ride, the 56, the stack was 575 mil. Now, I plotted a graph in the review of all the current World Tour bikes, and there are a couple of outliers like the Ridley Noah Fast and the Bianchi Ultra RC, which have step down head tubes, and so I would say it doesn't artificially lower the stack, but it's different. But across the board,
the Bianchi has the praying mantis aerials.
Yes. Roughly speaking, I would say the average stack height for the size I ride is around 565, whereas the Gen 4 Evo was 575. So by dropping it down 10 mil, they're kind of bringing it in line with everything else, but they're doing that as I feel the trend is sort of moving
going the other way.
Yeah. Like everybody's sort of looking for more reach and sometimes more stack to go along with that. And Cannondale sort of, where they already had the increased stack, they've decided to reduce that rather than increasing the reach in line with what the sort of modern positions that a lot of competitive minded riders are adopting.
Yeah, I mean, you had some pretty strong feelings on that in your review, so I'm not going to get you to repeat them here. I think let's send people to your review for any more information on that. And I know you'll find some pretty strong opinions on where you think Cannondale may have got it wrong, but also around Cannondale's reasoning as to why they've done what they've done, which from a business case makes sense, but maybe from a pure progressive road race bike point of view, as you point out, might be missing a trick or two. But I think that's not the easiest equation to balance. So yeah, I like that your review covered that element of it. I think it's a really interesting point of view. So what else? Cannondale has another bike, right?
Really interesting point of view. Is that your way of saying I'm wrong?
No, I think it's highly subjective. I think you're right, but I also see it from Cannondale's point of view as to end of the day, they need to go with the safe play as far as selling bikes, and sometimes that's also not cutting edge.
I mean, that you've sort of hinted on the other thing I get into in the review there, which is like, why now? Why does a Gen 5 exist right now? Like, at least from what I'm hearing, and if you follow the market trends as well, it seems like the dedicated aero bike is coming back. What I hear Cannondale fans crying out for is a new System 6. The Gen 4 Evo was still pretty young. What did it need? It needed a tweak to the mold that would have added UDH. You could have added those new handlebars, rolled out the reserve wheels as the 2026 model year, and that would have been a decent upgrade for it. And then pour the development budget into a new System 6. Yeah, that hasn't happened.
You're overlapping with the topic that we want to get to on our minds. So we're going to come back to this.
Cut me off.
All right, Ronan. We wrapped up our chat about the Super 6 Evo, and then the next day you said, actually, I have things to talk about as far as another bike from Cannondale. So what else are they up to?
Yeah, because Cannondale released 2 bikes this week. They also have the new Super Slice. That's their time trial and triathlon bike, and it's the first update to that platform since 2021. So that was kind of due an update. And there's everything you might expect. Deeper forks, modified tube profiles throughout. Tire clearance increased to 32 mil. Some tweaks to the steering geometry. It also gets the Delta steerer that Cannondale is using on other road platforms.
Sort of almost a triangular steer tube.
Yeah. It just helps with keeping a narrower head tube while you're integrating the brake hoses. They've got a new base bar. It's got a monoriser system, kind of very much in line with what you would expect if they were bringing their time trial bike up to date. And they're claiming a 14% reduction in frame set aero drag on that bike, which they've equated to a 10-watt saving at 50 kilometers per hour. But none of that is why this bike has got me interested and why we're picking up the conversation 24 hours later again.
Yes, which is, you've written an article on this, which should be live on Escape Collective by the time everyone's hearing this. It's been a busy week for you, Aaron. But yeah, I think the main thing here is you're saying this time trial bike may just be why we're not seeing a new System 6 aero road bike? Or are you saying it could fill the gap for us not seeing that bike?
Yeah, more the latter. I don't think I will go as far as to say, and I don't think Cannondale would ever go as far as to make a Super Slice their replacement for the System 6. And as bonkers as everything I just said sounds, bear with me here a second, because I think there is some justification in this theory. And it all sort of stems from the UCI's update to the frame approval process 5 years ago, in that when they did that, they brought road bikes, time trial bikes, track bikes, and cyclocross bikes under one approval process umbrella, so to speak. At the time, that was sort of done with the idea of simplifying that frame approval process, mostly for the UCI, but also for manufacturers.
And a bit done for equality, I think, was one of the excuses that, someone who had a cyclocross bike could still line up to race road on it. Or vice versa. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Sidestepping that one because, anyway.
It's a silly reasoning. I just remember them claiming that at the time.
Yeah. I think it was just to simplify their job in IGLA. But anyway, as the saying goes, all rules come with unintended consequences. And the unintended consequence of that, I think, is about to bear fruit in that with the greatly exaggerated death of the dedicated aero bike, sort of kicked off by Specialized when they ditched the Venge and brought in the Do-It-All SL7 tarmac, continued by the likes of Cannondale, who've got rid of their System 6, by Trek, they've merged the Madone and the Amonda into one frame. With the disappearance of those dedicated aero bikes that had a large fan base, many of those riders are crying out for the likes of Cannondale to bring back a System 6, and we're not really getting any indication that's going to happen. And as I've had conversation with manufacturers over the last couple of years, and as I sat down to write something about the new Super Slice, it struck me that actually the solution to this lack of dedicated aero bike problem is sort of staring us in the face. And that is, time trial frames are now legal for use as per the new frame approval process in road races. Now, there are a whole lot of caveats as to why you might not want to do that. It's also probably why the UCI didn't predict this unintended consequence at the time, because the idea of running a time trial bike you would have to change the base bar is the first thing we have to say, but the idea of running a time trial frame with drop handlebars in a road race 5 years ago was just unthinkable. But as riders are progressing towards these more and more forward positions that we see adopted so often now, actually the idea isn't all that bonkers. And then when you consider things like the Ridley Noah Fast 3 with its exceptionally low stack height, the Dare VAVS bike that Uno X used to ride, it has a similar low stack height. The Bianchi Ultra, which is maybe the original of this category, it has just a crazy low stack height. All those use either proprietary handlebars or some form of handlebars, which effectively has a riser stem built into it that lifts the contact points of the handlebars back up to the position that you would want for a road position. And when you combine that with, typically time trial bikes have more reach built into them anyway, but that's something riders are demanding, or at least asking for. Suddenly it's not as bonkers as it seems when you first consider the thought. To the point that I know of at least several manufacturers who are already dabbling in prototype drop bar handlebars to fit their time trial frames and forks and steers and whatever combinations they have there.
I mean, it sounds all quite plausible, especially if there's going to be new handlebars made to make this happen. But what are the downsides to this? Why wouldn't people consider doing this?
Yeah, I mean, this is an add-on to this week's episode, so I'm only skimming the surface of what the article goes into here. So, like, anybody who's actually interested in this should really go and read the article for all the details. Even as much as I'm like putting forward this idea and this concept here, I'm not totally convinced. I mean, first of all, part of my thinking was that, the original justification for ditching the aero bike was that a do-it-all bike, while the master of none, can be a jack of all trades. And for the varied terrain that World Tour riders are racing on day in, day out, it's maybe the better platform. That sort of justification has now shifted to when you speak to manufacturers, they'll tell you, yeah, but it's just, logistically, the teams don't want to be handling 2 different bikes and shipping them around the world for 4 different teams that are racing on different continents on the same day with men and women in different races and this, that, and the other. And as I sort of pondered that, I realized it's not actually a 2-bike problem. It's a 3-bike problem. Because when you factor in the time trial bike that they have to carry for most races or some races, it becomes 3 bikes instead of 2. So if a time trial bike could double up and replace the dedicated aero bike, you have no extra bikes in the truck than you currently do. You don't have an entire extra platform. And the reason I'm going back over that ground now is because actually when you think about it, okay, you might reduce the logistics nightmare, but you start introducing the nightmare for mechanics of having to change handlebars from their aero bike to the time trial setup for time trial day and then back again, which during a grand tour is probably going to require flying in extra staff and all sorts. It just gets impractical pretty quickly.
It's cheaper and easier just to pack an extra bike at that point.
Yeah. There are other potential downsides, not least of which is, like, can you even get the stiffness profile you would want? Like, none of the current crops of time trial bikes, as far as I know, have been designed to handle suitably in, a chaotic World Tour sprint lead out into the middle of some town in Belgium. Unpredictability and handling is not something you want in that kind of scenario. And that's before you even ask your World Tour sprinter with 1600 watts or whatever to unleash all that fury through a frame that is optimized for aero efficiency, not for load bearing. Obviously they're safe to do these sorts of things on, but they're maybe not as they won't perform as well as your actual road bike would. And that's a hurdle I'm not convinced that brands could even overcome if they decided in future, we want our time trial frame to double up. Because, inherently the tube profiles and shaping that make it aerodynamically efficient are not good load management sort of profiles. That said, think back 15 years ago to the original S5 and other aero bikes of that era. They handled like gates, and we overcame those issues. So perhaps there is some light there at the end of the tunnel, but ultimately it all comes down to whether or not brands want to, first of all, are they interested in doing this? Secondly, do they want to design, prototype, manufacture, and sell handlebars to make this possible? But all that said, I still think if you stuck a set of drop bars on the new Super Slice, there would be a queue a mile long outside Cannondale dealers to order one, and you might find someone like Ben Healy right at the front of that queue.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I guess with that, if you're a betting man, do you think we'll see a Super Slice in a mass start road race with drop bars this year?
Don't think we'll see a Super Slice, if I'm honest.
Okay.
I just don't know if Cannondale's in that spot right now to do that.
But you're hinting that we might see another brand do it.
or more specifically, maybe I'm not sure if EF is the team to do that. I do have hope we will see a drop bar time trial bike in use this year. There will be listeners to this who are saying, like, I've done this years ago, and I know, but the amateurs very much these days are ahead of the pros, and the pros could learn more than a thing or two from the amateurs. But I'm speaking in terms of the pro ranks here. I would not be surprised at all to see it this year.
Yeah, I think I mentioned on the podcast before, but I had a converted time trial bike into a drop bar bike at one point. BMC time machine. And I had drop bars on it. It was my commuter. I single speeded it because it had horizontal dropouts.
Brilliant.
I'm sorry. I'm causing you great pain here.
No. It's funny the brand and the model that you mentioned, because that's one I suspect maybe a possibility with.
Sure. Okay. All right. Anyway. All right. Very interesting. Yeah. Do check out Ronan's article on that just for a bit more insight on that, because I think you may be onto something here. All right. Let's get on to some other news. We've got Favero have just released a free firmware update, which basically doubles the battery longevity in their new Pro MX2 and RS2 pedals. So yeah, for the latest generation Favero power meter pedals, you now get a free update that takes your battery longevity from a claimed 80 hours to a claimed 160, which is pretty exceptional. So yeah, it's a great one. Always love a free update that makes a product better. And those products were already really, really good. I think, Ronan, you've been pretty impressed with your RS2 pedals, if I'm not mistaken.
Maybe not.
Oh.
I've been meaning to pop them off an email because I've had a couple of issues arise in the review sample I have, which has delayed the review. I mean, I can't say which is right or wrong, but I'm just not finding they line up with any other parameter I have.
Huh.
And then, yeah, there's also the sort of, how did you describe it in your review of the MX pedals? The little shimmy that you can get, the little wobble that you can get in the pedal body.
Yeah, a little bit of side to side from the needle bearing, yeah.
Not exactly loving that.
Do you feel that?
Not. Yeah, I have to concentrate. It's
okay.
It's only if I go looking for it that it's an issue. So not really. But I still, in terms of, if you got a Dura-Ace pedal and you just you unclip, the pedal will fall. It'll rotate. It'll fall.
Yeah, these have a little bit more resistance.
Yeah, they just stay in place, which I never like that. I don't think it makes a difference, but I just think such a good product. Otherwise, it's kind of, I just feel like it should be about the small things like that.
Yeah, okay, interesting. All right, well, yeah, sounds like you've got some stuff to have a review for, so hopefully we can, get to that soon. But free update on that one. Let's save the rest of those thoughts for another day. We've also got Track Bicycle. They're celebrating 50 years. It's their 50th anniversary, and with that, they've got they basically teased a whole bunch of anniversary related products. So they've started off with some Project One Madone bikes with pretty fancy paintwork that to celebrate the 50th, and they've teased that a whole lot more is to come as far as accessories and components. So yeah, I guess that's just a little heads up to watch out for Trek. If you're a Trek fan, then certainly expect some limited edition stuff to come. And then we've also got Factor. Ronan, over the weekend, you actually spotted a new gravel bike. Is this the new Ostro Gravel we're looking at?
We have to assume so.
Yeah.
No comment from Factor on it, but yeah, I was sitting trying to watch the Cannondale Gravel Stage 1, and as happens these days, I picked up my phone, started doom scrolling, and stumbled on a story from David Miller that he'd posted where I was like, oh, that looks like a new gravel. That doesn't look like the Ostro Gravel. And then I screenshotted it and did all that, and it's like, oh, this is definitely a new bike, and there's it looks like a significant update. And the wheels probably were the first thing that caught my eye, and they look like they're at least 65mm deep, plus a 50mm tire that Bardet and Clara Spack were riding, and you're looking at I recently measured this on the Willie Rave SLR review that I have publishing in the next week or two. That bike comes with 48mm deep rims and 50mm tires, and measuring that, it was actually the same sort of total system cord length as a 77mm deep road wheel with a 29mm tire.
Doesn't surprise me. Yeah.
So, and this is, the rim is deeper here again, so we could be looking at over 100mm of sort of total system depth, which is interesting. And then the frame itself, there's quite a few updates to that as well. I'll not go through them all here because I have detailed them quite extensively in the article that I did write on Saturday morning, but whole host of aero sort of upgrades. I think the thing that is maybe most interesting though is there was a snippet at the end of one of, I think it might have been Factor's own Instagram reel, that had Roman Bardet on this new frame, but with forks that look ever so much like the super wide forks that came on the new Factor 1 that was unveiled in December. So yeah, they didn't use those in the Cannondale race at the weekend, but they certainly exist because there was a picture of Bardet sort of rubbing his hand down one of the fork legs.
Wild. So. Very wild. Okay, yeah, well, one to watch. I mean, it was only a few weeks ago that I saw Bardet racing the old Factor Ostro with just 40mm tires fitted. So Factor's suddenly busy swapping things and changing things up there. So
one thing I didn't mention in the article, it was a Saturday. I wasn't doing this as work. I was doing this more as fun. A rare opportunity to actually do a spotted article that we had not been seeded with any information. I had literally just spotted the thing, and just having a little bit of fun with it. But one thing I forgot to mention, just with it being a Saturday morning, it doesn't look like they've really updated the geometry all that much, because both Bardet and Clarasback were both running sort of traditional length stems.
Gotcha. Yep.
So that's kind of the big question mark for me now.
Bardet, it might not tell you much, because Bardet himself is quite a traditional rider in his fit. Like he actually runs a hell of a lot of saddle setback and traditional length cranks. So he may just need a traditional length stem if I don't know. I'm guessing here, but yeah, I saw his bike is in Adelaide, Australia, and his saddle was slammed all the way back on like what I think was a setback C-post as well. So it could be that traditional length stem is still very, very long. So one to consider. Anyway, no, I'm sure we'll find out more as the season goes on. And then I guess the last bit of news out of the industry, and this one's a bit of a sad one, but King Liu, the founder of Giants Bicycle, has passed. So age 93, and he leaves a pretty impressive legacy behind as far as starting what is one of the largest bicycle manufacturers in the world, and sort of helped to put Taiwan largely on the map as the cycling manufacturing king that it is. So I think chapeau. But he leaves. Currently, his daughter Phoebe Liu is running the show there. So she's the CEO, and there's a long line of other Lius waiting to do important things there. So proper family related company that. So all right, well, let's take a quick break and we'll be back in a minute. Ronan, what's been on your mind lately?
What's been on my mind is I watched a video sometime last year. I can't remember who made it, when it was, anything, but basically the gist of the video was that sim racing hardware, as you all know, I'm into my sim racing, is becoming more and more like phones. In that the updates are so subtle. Every year there's a new iPhone, but I mean, can you really tell any difference from the year before? And like the last time I updated my phone, the previous one was about 4 or 5 years old, and you got the new one within a day. It was like, I don't see there being any difference here. And the launch of the new Cannondale this week had me thinking something along the same lines about bikes. I mean, the updates are just becoming increasingly more subtle. And while on the one hand, I can appreciate that when you have a good formula, you iterate it rather than just revolutionizing for the sake of it. And in some ways, it indicates you've got a genuinely good platform to build on. The only updates you're going to be able to find are very minor. And I think that was the case with the Cervelo S5. But it does, when they roll around so quickly like the Cannondale did, it does get me. I just don't like it, because it's capitalism, isn't it? There's something new to buy. It's selling the fear of missing out. Claims, which admittedly Cannondale haven't gone hard on, but I'm just speaking generally here now, claims of this much faster and this much lighter and things that don't really make a difference. And just, something new to buy much too quickly, I think, is my issue with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is unfortunately a reminder that cycling as a whole, at least the performance end of things, is actually a fashion market in many ways, right? Like it is just increasingly as well. It's fast fashion. The product cycle is getting shorter and shorter, and things are changing, and not necessarily always to bring benefit to the rider, but just to give the rider something new to buy. And hopefully we continue to point that out when we think that's the case. But I agree. I think it's the same thing, but what's the equivalent to like the extra megapixel in the camera and the extra lens on the phone? What's the bicycle equivalent? Is it the UDH?
No, because I think with that you start to get some optionality, at least in terms of like group sets and stuff. Or even if you don't go for full mount derailleurs, which you probably wouldn't do on a Cannondale SuperSix, but at least the UDH hanger for a standard derailleur, in theory, is easier to find wherever you should be in the world than,
and it's robust.
Yeah. So that from that point of view, well, robust, I don't know, man. They come apart far too easily, but
You can get robust options.
That aside, I can see, and that's why I said, like, when I was drifting into this part of the conversation when we were talking about Cannondale earlier, that's why I said, like, just adjust the mold so that you can, like, Specialized did with the Crux. They made it UDH compatible, but there was basically no other changes to that frame. I think the extra megapixel is like the 70 gram saving from this or that or the other, or you know, those things, like they just make,
that's the one,
so little difference in terms, like, unless you're the Roman Bardet of this world and you're racing up Alpe d'Huez trying to win a stage in the overall in the Tour, those sorts of things just don't make a difference to your ride. I wouldn't even say like a 70 gram or 150 gram, I think was the claim with the new Super 6, that makes a difference in terms of feel. Like, it's just not enough. So, you know, certainly there might not be a measurable performance gain from reducing weight, but we can feel these things when we ride, and that's sometimes enough because it feels nicer. And that SL build at 6.4 kilos, you add in your pedals and it's up to 6.6 or whatever, that versus an 8 kilo frame or an 8 kilo bike, that's going to feel nicer. But
it's going to be slower.
Depends which 8 kilo bike we're talking about.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just, like, I want to give Cannondale some credit. They didn't go super hard on these savings and stuff like that, and, you know, claims of this much faster and this, that, and the other. They did have them in there because they're kind of damned if they do and damned if they don't. If they don't make claims 100%. Like that, they get ripped apart on social media. If they do, I don't know, they maybe don't get ripped apart, but I
found their I mean, at least from your review, from what I've read, I haven't actually seen their press materials, but at least from your quotes from the brand, they sound like they were really transparent on a lot of that, and I kind of find that quite refreshing versus other brands that launch and say, you know, we're X watts faster, and you really look into the white paper and you're like, hang on, that's just because you've put aero bottles on the bike, or, you know, that's because you've used a 26 mil with tire on the front. It's the bike itself isn't any faster. So I do appreciate the honesty there. And yeah,
there's also even when these aero saving claims are real and measured legitimately, they still exist in this, like, isolation or in this vacuum. In the exact conditions measured, it's this much faster. But, you know, if it inhibits adjustability, or if you can't get your position set up right, or you need to go and order a new handlebar, or, you know, just all these things that make it more difficult to get the actual rider into good position, then those gains don't exist anymore. That's, you know, it's something that's faster on paper isn't always faster in the real world.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're getting into a topic that I think we've had before, and I'm sure we'll have again, because I know you're working on something related to that. But back to the phones, to the phone analogy. What's the flip phone of the cycling world right now? The phone that's just trying to disrupt it all and just be like, your current thing doesn't fold in half, and therefore it is rubbish. I think it's 32-inch wheels are trying to be the flip phone.
So you're gonna have
like a flip phone, the early iterations will probably fold in half.
Yeah, I did see a rim fold in half this weekend, but it wasn't 32-inch.
Okay.
I mean, on the roadside, it's your...
Sorry, I shouldn't say flip phone. The folding screen phones. What do they call them?
Flip phones. I think that's what they're called.
I don't know. Flip phone makes me think of like a 2000s Motorola, but yeah.
Yeah. Like, my mind, before you said 32-inch, my mind went to like the Factor 1 and the Ridley Noahs of this world. You know, and to some extent, not specifically with those bikes, but with bikes in general, some of them exist because every 3 years we update our model and we bring out something new and we sell it to our customers. Other bikes come into existence and exist because there is demand in the market or a gap in the market to produce something that customers we know we're willing to pay for. And so like this more progressive geometry trend, while I'm very excited by it, I think the jury is still out on it. And I think some of the bikes that are adopting that at the moment, while some brands are very, very good and they are hyper focused on performance, others naturally jump on the bandwagon. For every flip phone that has an extra resolution, megapixel camera resolution, some of them are, gimmicks like that Motorola in the mid 2000s. Others are a first gen iPhone, which are going to eventually shake up the entire market or discipline or whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
Yep. And in mountain bikes, you can still buy the Nokia 3310.
Yeah.
The indestructible thing. It's just you have to spend a lot of money for the thing now.
Well, from what I hear, nobody's buying them. Much like the Nokias.
I feel like the Nokia 3310 is like a Surly.
Was it not was the Nokia 6910 or something? Was just like they stopped making it because it didn't break, and when it didn't break, you couldn't sell you a new phone. So,
yeah.
The bikes that are too good and thus have to be discontinued so they can make something else are few and far between.
Yeah. But no, I think the analogy completely applies, and I think it applies in a lot of industries. But certainly feeling that in cycling, that every year you see a new phone come out and it claims an extra hour battery longevity, which somehow never actually works out to be longer than what your last phone lasted for, other than the fact that you had a dying battery and a phone that was overwhelmed by new firmware. And you have a slightly better camera, and I think we're cycling, but at least in the performance end of things, looking at the road bikes, a few watts faster and a few grams lighter, I think is exactly that. So
I think what also frustrates me about it is and I do get it, the marketing is only ever about the aero savings and the weight savings and those sorts of things, and the sort of language around those claims is like, we are all in on performance and we are leaving no stone unturned. And then you say, yeah, but you're not offering a free swap in stem length, or I can't adjust my saddle angle right, and so it can't get into my position. They're like, yeah, but I mean, most people don't care about that stuff. And I was like, well, that's okay. Granted, most people don't care, but don't also try to tell me that you're leaving no stone unturned, because there are two stones that are greatly unturned. So it's as I often say, having your cake and wanting to eat it. It's I would just have so much more time for a press release that said, look, in these specific conditions for this specific test rider, we found this. If you want to do the same, you're going to have to do X, Y, and Z, or just some dose of reality in the middle of it all. Which I get it. That's not going to sell very many bikes for them.
No.
If anything, it just opens up questions that what's the old saying? Never give someone a reason not to buy your product. And that's what brands would be doing in this case. So I do understand the predicament they're in. I just get the sense from talking to some brands that they are more respectful of that, and they are sort of cringe a little bit more at their own marketing material than other brands who just accept it and drink it full.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate the brands that now publish genuine white papers that are more than just marketing material, that actually go into the science and the testing that they've done. I do appreciate that, but I also think, and I understand the difficulty here for brands, which is, we're in a society now that's been trained to get everything from a headline, and so giving all those clauses and trying to explain and educate a customer into the situations where their product is better and why it's not a significant update, but why they did work really, really hard to get these little updates that they made. It's not how modern marketing works. I don't believe. A thought,
Dave. Just a thought here. Bear with me on this wild theory that I'm about to spout. Imagine if they waited, 6-7 years between updates, and then they actually had genuine updates to sell us, and the updates would sell themselves because we would look at it and go, oh yeah, that old bike, that was kind of old in that regard. This update is much better. I can see why this is better.
I appreciate the thought, but I think the way some of these brands are set up and how much they require on continual turnover of products, I don't know if they'd survive long enough to get to the 7th year.
Some brands do have 5-year cycles, which I think is
they do.
A decent start.
They do. But yeah, I feel like increasingly we're narrowing the gap toward phones, right? Seeing more and more brands get close to that 1 to 2 year sort of slight iteration, because they've got customer groups that bite. You know,
At least the phones kind of hold their price. Not in terms of resale value, but like you kind of know what an iPhone's going to cost you next September versus what it costs you right now. Although, maybe that's going to change this year. I don't know. But with the bikes, it's kind of like, who knows how much extra is going to be on the price tag next time around.
All right. Well, let's move on. But yeah, I think that's one that's probably a fun one to continue a discussion on. So yeah, people have strong thoughts on that analogy. Create a thread on the Escape Collective forum. We can take it from there. But
bikes are like phones.
All right. Yep. Some of them are as fragile as them too. So all right, let's stop.
At least phones are waterproof. They don't creak.
Yeah. And unlike some of the latest aero bikes, you can still sit on your phone and it'll be fine. So whereas some bikes sit on that top tube, probably not so good. All right. Let's move on. All right, let's take a quick break. We'll be right back. All right, Ronan, before we head on over to Ask a Wrench, we've got a PSA, and this one comes from Colin Williams, who was actually the mechanic who jumped on Ask a Wrench last week to help answer some questions. And shortly after that episode, and also the threaded article that I published last week, which is all about correct torque wrench usage and like the sort of myths and hidden things that a lot of people don't understand about torque wrenches, he posted something on Instagram related to slipping SRAM hoods. And this applies to the latest generation as well, the E1 generation hoods. Become a pretty common issue, unfortunately. SRAM actually had a bit of a recall on this, stating that it was because there was too much dried Loctite applied to the bolts at factory. And so when you tighten the bolt, it doesn't actually achieve the expected clamping force for what your torque wrench is saying. And so that recall basically suggested opening or unwinding and tightening the bolt multiple times to wear out that Loctite. So you'd achieve better clamping force for a given torque. But Colin's been posting that isn't always the solution. And yeah, he pointed to the SRAM manual very clearly pointing out that these hoods have to be installed with carbon paste inside the band on the handlebar. And he's basically shared that in some cases, even that's not enough. And so, yeah, he sort of came out and said he's experienced pretty bad issues with any bars that sort of have like a smooth surface to them, especially carbon bars that have any friction or like a roughness to them in that, like that's actually embedded into the material of the bar. So like he gave the example of like Eastern carbon handlebars being a problem for him. But yeah, just a PSA, like when you're installing these, make sure you can't get them to slip before you go ahead and wrap bar tape around them. If you can get them to slip, then chances are they're not safe to use, and yeah, you need to figure out a solution for that. And unfortunately, just over tightening them isn't always the best solution, or isn't recommended at least, because it can in some cases lead to cracking of the shifter bodies. So this is a potentially a big one, and I think we probably need to do some more reporting on it and figure out what SRAM's doing to really fix this, because it does seem to be fairly widespread at the moment. So Ronan, have you experienced this at all? Have you had any slipping hoods?
I didn't realize at the time, but I think I have. In that I had one review bike come to me, and it wasn't even like on an early ride, but after I can't remember how long, but anyway, one day one of the levers slipped. I didn't really think much of it at the time. It's just like, oh, that wasn't tightened or whatever. But so I think I have. Two questions for you though. What kind of torque, and I think this is going to be bar specific, but what type of torque should you be tightening levers to? And if you were to over torque it, which goes first, the lever crack the way you explained there, or the handlebar just crushing?
Okay, so general advice here. Please consult your doctor for specific information. But I think, yeah, what was the first one? The torque you're meant to do them up to is 6 Newton meters on the SRAM E1 levers. Check with every other lever is going to be different, but 6 Newton meters for the SRAM.
Is that with all bars? Because I remember a point where you would ask the grip set manufacturer, what torque should you tighten your levers to? And they would say, oh, ask your handlebar manufacturer. And the handlebar manufacturer would say, ask a lever manufacturer.
Yeah, and I think SRAM still have a clause saying like if your handlebar manufacturer requests lower, then do lower. At least that's the case for Shimano. But I think it's a problem because, I think by now I'd hope that any new handlebar is basically designed to meet the specifications and the requirements of the key group sets, SRAM being one of them. So I'd hope all new bars in the market are actually rated for that sort of torque. I'm not aware of any that now request less than that, but please let me know. But of course, the risk is that you do put it onto an earlier bar that still requests a lower torque than 6. Aluminium bars are pretty safe in this regard. They will handle really whatever you want without deformation or without any like creep in them. So you can kind of tighten them all you like with, and really the fail point will be the shifter. But yeah, I think carbon bars are still a bit of a balance, and unfortunately, it's a pretty weird area of the bike. It's, you're asking to clamp onto what's arguably the weakest point of the handlebar because they're having to curve the carbon fiber, and it's the area of the handlebar that's most likely to have issues in the molding process. Actually getting correct compaction in that space and getting correct layup and all that. Like there's a lot of question marks, and then you're clamping onto this like rounded radius that doesn't, without a truly rounded profile. Like the clamp itself isn't perfectly rounded. So I don't know. It feels to me like we're kind of in a day and age where like maybe this is the one area of the bike that truly needs attention and a full redo. Like I'm imagining some kind of like T-slot where the bolt, like a T-slot bolt, actually comes directly out of the bar and you just bolt the lever to that.
Sorry, I shouldn't be laughing, but I'm laughing because I think you're forgetting, I don't know, carbon steerers and headsets that we use on modern bikes and internal cable routing and things that need addressed.
There's a lot that needs addressed, yeah.
You know that mountain bike system that we brought onto road before we had carbon steers and internal hose routing and stuff, and was never really ideal, but kind of did a job, and we're still using it today. Probably needs addressed also.
Probably, yeah. But I don't know. It just seems like where the carbon bars specifically and the shifter interface, it does feel like we've come back to it being a problem. We had it all sorted, and I don't have the answers, but right now, it does feel like that's potentially one of the more obvious weaknesses of SRAM's group sets, and that this can happen. One tip I read on Colin's Instagram that someone said is that Visma actually put like a bit of skateboard tape, a bit of like sandpaper tape beneath the shifter hoods for extra friction. That's a pretty cool tip. But as Colin pointed out, like in a desert conditions, that adhesive can actually start to fail, and so it's not necessarily a permanent solution. But yeah, I think the only real PSA I can give is just check that your hoods don't move easily under significant pressure, and if they do, then consult the handlebar manufacturer or consult SRAM for answers on that.
Is there something in manufacturers adding a textured finish to this area? I know some do, but obviously it's not enough of a texture. Like
that seems like the bars that have that are significantly less likely to have the issue. So I think that's definitely a start. And the more aggressive that texturing can be, and the more reinforcement they put in that radius section of the drop, I think in that clamp zone, I think is all great stuff. That area shouldn't experience material creep. It shouldn't compress as you tighten the lever, because that just means the lever slackens off over time. So there's a few factors going on there, but yeah, if they can make that more resistant to compression and make it grippier, then I think we've solved the issue. But anyway, there's plenty of bars out there that you just need to be really careful with at the moment. So especially when you're using these SRAM levers. The problem isn't exclusive to SRAM. I've had slipping issues with a few Shimano here and there. The wheel top group set I'm using at the moment has also been slipping around similar to SRAM, but it's I don't know. I think it's more the day and age of bar that we're in rather than the purely to blame the shifter. So
can I give you one combination that doesn't work? Campagnola record 12-speed mechanical levers on kids 28 centimeter wide handlebars.
Is that a slipping issue?
You can fully tighten them up, and the levers will just slide on and off. The bars are obviously different. But I had stripped my Tarmac SL6 and with the idea of putting on these tiny bars and put everything back together and then put the levers on. It's like, they don't even fit. I should have checked that first.
No good.
Useless information.
Thank you for that, Ron. Yeah, don't match your Campagnolo Super Record 12-speed with children's handlebars.
Not a great idea.
Not the PSA for you. All right, let's wrap it up there. I think you've got a hard stop now. You've got a plane to catch, and for something that I'm sure everyone will hear about in the near future.
It'll not
Sounds
be
pretty
near,
exciting.
unfortunately. It'll be probably summertime before I can talk about this.
Okay. Well, yeah, you're going into a large room that blows a lot of wind and is cold to do some testing. So that sounds good. All right. Well, let's wrap things up and let's head on over to Ask a Wrench, where we've got Zach and we've got a bunch of interesting questions this week. So again, if you're not on the member feed, this is where the episode ends. Please head to escapecollective.com/geek warning and become a member. Join all that we do, support that we do, and experience a fully ad-free experience with plenty of member-exclusive extras. And while I've got you all, we haven't asked this in a while, but please consider leaving us a review on your podcast player of choice. It really helps others find our podcast. And so, to do so, everyone needs to head on over to the free versions of the podcast, whether that's on Apple or Spotify, and just search for Geek Warning. You'll find it, and leave a review on your preferred player. It's much appreciated. All right. Thanks, everyone. Ronan, good to see you.
Good to see you too. I will leave you with the wishing that my daughter gave me this morning, and that is Happy St. Pancakes Day to those who celebrate.
Is it a St. Pancakes Day?
It's Pancake Tuesday. I don't think there is a Saint Pancake.
We should make this a thing. I like this. Love it. Anyway, all right. Catch you soon. Cheers, everyone.